And I also acknowledge Carolyn Haynes from CAHS. It's terrific to see you all. And I know Jan Loken quite well, so she has heard some of this story, not from me, but some years ago. But anyway, I have updated the story and done a bit more research into it. So thank you for Marion and John for your welcome. The Hajjastar o Hawatho Ker Ha Miras This and Dinar. Now, what I tried to say there was in Cornish was good afternoon, dear friends, and thanks for the welcome. After 2 weeks of 35-degree days, it's just after 6 a.m. on a very cool and wet Sunday morning here in Australia with a top of only 17 in Melbourne today. So perhaps I should have said Mittendar or good morning. I know you're having a lot of snow, so I can't whinge too much about the weather. As John has said, today is a great example of cooperation between our organisations, and I think we should do more of it. So well done to the TCA. We share the same objectives, even though we're separated by the tyranny of time and distance. Members and friends of the TCA, as well as those across the Cornish diaspora, including Cornish American heritage, will always be made welcome at any CAV Zoom meetings if you don't mind a late night. And thanks, John, for you attending our meeting yesterday. Now I will share my screen. Let's start. Now, the movie that you're about to see shortly about the journey of a Cornish-built lugger called The Spirit of Mystery. It's a classic story that needs to be told, and even though it's been told before, it needs to be told again. Like her predecessor, The Mystery, she sailed from Newland in Cornwall to Australia, arriving in Melbourne in 2009, 16 years ago. Before we see the movie, I'd like to remind us of the 7 Cornishmen who left Newland in November 1854 in the original Mystery. Now, this is a model of the Mystery, and it's in the Sailors Institute Trust at Newland. 7 heroic Cornishmen sailed from Newland to Australia on this small boat, arriving in March 1855 in search of gold, and this is their story. Now close your eyes and imagine you're back in Cornwall 171 years ago in October 1854 on a stormy night in Newland. It's blowing a hoolie, as they say there, with waves crashing over the seawall from Newland to Penzance, and the wind and the rain speak of a winter gloom to come. And Newland's a lovely little harbour village, and I know it reasonably well. It's on the western shores of Mounts Bay in Cornwall. It became famous later for its School of Art. Now, we all know that decisions made in the pub are often unwise. We've all heard of some harebrained scheme and thought it was probably made after a few drinks, perhaps down at the Duke of Cornwall in University Avenue. Well, we're now at the Star Inn on the Strand at Newland. I took the photo on the left in 2019. As a fisherman's pub inside, well, it was dark and seedy. I don't think it's ever been any different. Back in 1854, it was owned by Thomas Kalinack. Some pronounce it as Kleinack or even Kalinack, but tomato, tomato. I'll stick to traditional Cornish emphasis on the second syllable, Kalinack. A cousin of Thomas Kalinack was George Downing, who was tenant landlord and also a local brewer. Another cousin, Mary Kalinack, and her husband John worked here too, keeping it all in the family. Let's go inside. Sailors are elbow crooking or drinking at a table by the fire. You can smell fish, salt and beer. All you need are chips and mushy peas. All 7 are related by blood or marriage to the Kalinacks. Mary at the bar pours 2 large bumpers of ale. One was for her brother Job and another for her recently arrived brother-in-law, Richard Nichols. Richard lived in Hale but was staying with the Downings at Vine Cottage on the Newland Coombe. Now I'm going to make this part of my talk interactive. My friend John Webb will play the role of Job. He has the right voice. My Ocker accent just won't cut it, so thanks, John. And our friend David Hutchings also has the right voice and will play Richard. And thanks so much, David. I'll just stop and over to you guys.
Over to the Cornish accent.
Oh, Hag, cometh in, about be home early, Captain.
Hey, from Brother Charlie, heard from Brother Charlie in the colonies?
Yes, he found gold and done struck it rich he has, so he says.
So boys going, are we?
We be penny lugging. We want to sell mystery and go to Australia.
Why sell her? Just sailing her.
If we don't sell, what hope we got getting to Australia?
Keep me a minute. She can stand what, says throws?
But we don't have the navigation.
I'll tell you what, take you, I will, to Australia. An EB crew. Come on, son.
Right on, Captain, right on.
Thanks, John and David, or as we say in Australia, good on you. Let's give them a hand. Now, as a former teacher, I'm sorry I can't help myself. What's Yeki Da mean? No, apart from John and David. No, it's actually spelt Yeghs, Da. It's
means very
dialect. Good. No, it means...
In Welsh it does.
In Cornish, the adjective is always after the noun. So Yeghs is about, Yeghs is about health. So it means health good. Good health.
Good health.
You might say salut, and in Oz we say cheers, mate. So what about penny legging? Penny legging, it means I'm short of a quid or I've got no money. So there you go. You learn something every day. I'll go back to sharing the screen. Okay, now we're going back to the Star Inn. A bottle of rum, this epic adventure was born. The Mystery was built in Newland in 1847 by John Blewett, so it wasn't that old. It was registered to Job and Richard, but they shared the proceeds of the catch, like the tributers, one and all. Cornish luggers were built to handle heavy seas, but sailing across the Southern Ocean was unheard of. Next night, they met at Vine Cottage, where George Downing gave them £200 to finance the trip. Now, in the 1850s, Newland was dependent on fishing, mainly pilchard and mackerel. People weren't well off. Many Cornish immigrants to Australia and the Americas, including Canada, were forced to leave by the potato blight and the depressions of the 1840s and 1850s. Mining collapsed, farms enclosed, and fishing was at the whim of nature. Times were straight, dialect for tough. Striking it rich in Australia was the plan, whether mining copper in South Australia in the 1840s or out on the Victorian goldfields in the 1850s. Passage was subsidised by the British government, just 16 guineas. Between 1845 and 1860, Cornwall lost 30% of its population, mostly men, to Australia and the Americas, including Canada. Now, the Kleinack family were fisher folk, and they were all generally from Newland. You might have heard of Mary Kleinack, who was a backjouster in baskets of fish to sell. Mary lived in Newland with Stephen Downing, and the Downings were an important family in Newland connected to the Kleinack clan. In 1851, Mary turned 80 and was entitled to a pension which she hadn't received. So she walked for 5 weeks and 350 miles to London to put her case. She visited the Great Exhibition at Crystal Palace and was introduced to Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, as you see there. However, she failed to get her pension and died in 1854, buried in a pauper's grave at Paul. In the same year, the Kleinacks were again in the news with the voyage to Australia of our Cornishmen in the Mystery. So who were they? The skipper was Richard Nichols. He was 36 and married to Victoria Kleinack. She was pregnant with their second child. He'd served in the Royal Navy, was on leave as the captain of its 700-ton Welsh coastal trader and could navigate by the stars. Job Kleinack was 34, the eldest son of Charles Kleinack's second marriage to Phyllis Curnow. Now, please remember the name Phyllis Curnow, and I'll tell you why shortly. Job's younger brother Charles was in Australia at Bendigo, which is 2 hours by car from here, digging for gold, and wrote home about his success. Job was also brother-in-law to the Badcock brothers. William Badcock was 32 and Richard 36. William married Harriet Kalinack, pregnant with their fourth child. Richard Badcock married Phyllis Nanny Kalinack, and Charles Bose was 28, and he was a cousin of the Curnows via the Hitchens family. The mother of Philip Curnow Matthews was a Curnow, and Philip was just 23. The Curnows were beer retailers, also were an important part of the Kalinack clan. Lewis, their son Lewis, but anyway, he was 38 from Penzance. He was the eldest. His mother was Jane Lewis, possibly Welsh. We all probably have people in our family trees who are often viewed harshly long ago because they were born out of wedlock. There's at least 4 in mine, and this is no different. Lewis is now known by the Kalinack family as Lewis Kalinack. He was a son of Charles Kalinack, born before Charles was married. Lewis was also the cook on Mystery. As a 2-masted lugger, Mystery was registered in Penzance and given number 233. There are 3 types of sails: the square, the fore and aft, and the lug sail. The dipping lug sails combine fore and aft and square sails. This gives you a larger sail area, but requires at least 4 men or 4 people to operate. It was used within 30 miles of the Cornish coast. However, luggers were quite capable in heavy seas where they would ride to rafter, roped to their raft. Mystery was carvel built, edge to edge, and not clinkered, or what we call weatherboard in Australia. These old photos of Cornish luggers show them with black hulls and sails burnt off with mops of burning tar. This kept them waterproof and preserved the wood. Mystery was 37 feet long, had a beam of 11 feet, weighing 16 tonnes. Just for comparison, the boats that go in the Sydney to Hobart yacht race are about 90 feet long, so Mystery was very small in comparison. The men from the Star Inn hauled the Mystery ashore, covered the hull in zinc, and built decking fore and aft before using George Downing's donation for the modifications. A compass, sextant, and barometer were also bought. She was then loaded with spare sails, salt beef, hardtack, ship's biscuits, and barrels of water. Mary Carter wrote that her mother, Harriet Badcock, remembered that when she was 4, she saw her father, William, set off with 6 other madmen into the unknown. On the morning of November 18, 1854, the Mystery sailed out into Mounts Bay. The entire population of Newland lined the shore to wish them Godspeed and a safe journey. Reports in the Cornishman suggested that they might never be seen again. Leaving Mounts Bay, they sailed through the Bay of Biscay into the Atlantic. They passed Madeira, experiencing the doldrums. They sighted the uninhabited island of Trinidad off Brazil, not Trinidad, just before Christmas. They made Cape Town on the 18th of January in 60 days, where they were asked to take mail to Australia. Flying the Royal Mail pendant, the Mystery met storms in the roaring 40s of the Southern Ocean. A hurricane meant they rode to the raft for 14 hours. A log entry from the 7th of March, 1855, written by Richard Nichols, says, "A terrific gale of wind, heaviest so far experienced. Our gallant little boat rides the mountains of sea remarkably well." The Mystery reached Hobson's Bay and Williamstown, back then the port of Melbourne, on the 14th of March, 1855. Hobson's Bay was crowded with ships, many deserted by their crews, gone to search for gold. There were also several hulks housing convicts. 7 heroic Cornishmen in a small fishing boat made Melbourne from Newland, navigating by the stars, in just 116 days with 1 stop. This feat of seamanship will never be equalled. So what happened to them? The crew went their own way and only 2 went to the goldfields. 5 returned home to Newland. Richard Nichols returned home in December 1855 and was killed at London in 1868 by a brewer's dray. It was thought that Job Kalinack found gold as he spent some time in Bendigo before returning to Newland. Job ended up living with his widowed sister Victoria, her daughter and her husband in Cardiff. Philip Curnow Matthews stayed here in Melbourne and worked as a surveyor, becoming chief surveyor for Melbourne in the 1880s. Matthews lived in Fitzroy next to the same George Downing, who had originally funded the trip. On hearing of Matthews' adventures, George and his wife came to Australia. It's a very small world. William and Richard Badcock stayed for a time but never made the goldfields as they became warders on the Williamstown prison hulks. They returned to Newland, as did Charles Bose, and resumed fishing. Lewis Kalinack went to the goldfields and then worked as a shepherd. He died of diphtheria aged 50 at Castlemaine in 1866 and was buried at Campbell's Creek with 10 Chinese children in a pauper's grave. None of these men achieved great personal fame, but they typified the resolve of thousands of cousin Jacks and Jennies who migrated to Australia and the Americas out of hardship and stayed, helping to forge our nations. English TV shows make fun of the Cornish for being slow-witted, but these heroic Cornishmen work for each other, one and all. This is what we call Cornishness, the core of the Cornish national psyche. So what happened to Mystery? She was sold for £150 in April 1855. Until 1866, she carted lime from Sorrento to the kilns at Melbourne and Geelong. This painting is by Wilbrahim Frederick Learday in 1862. He was and well-known watercolour artist, and you can see he's painted Mystery in the left-hand corner. He's just got the number wrong. Learday was a hotelier, as I said, but he was also the first European settler and founder of Port Melbourne, arriving in 1839 with his family. He became postmaster at Williamstown, knowing the boat that brought the mail from Cape Town. In 1866, Mystery became a pilot boat, Rockhampton in Queensland. In 1869, she was sunk in a storm. Now, there are two plaques about the Mystery at Newland. One on the right, unveiled on the 100th anniversary in 1954. The other on the left was in 2004 for the 150th. Now, I found this particular photo from the Cornishman in October last year. The man on the left is Edward Belitho, chair of the Sailors Institute Trust. The other trustee was my cousin John Peake, also a bard of the Gorset Curnow. Jess, are you here with us? I don't think so. That's okay. John, my cousin John, didn't speak to me of his interest in the Mystery, but I now know what it was. Remember, I asked you to remember Phyllis. It rang a bell with me, so I checked the Peake family tree. John's dad was Samuel Tucker Peake, who was twice mayor of Penzance. His mum and Jess's grandmother was, wait for it, Phyllis Kalinack Curnow of Newland and of the Kalinack Curnow clan. It is a very small world. In 2008, it was decided to reenact the 1854 voyage in a replica named the Spirit of Mystery. Oil lamps were to be used and navigation would be mostly by the sun and stars. Unlike the original, there was a toilet and gas cooker. Fallen Cornish oak was used for the frames, the keel and the stern were made from Eki hardwood. They used larch for planking and ash for the tiller. The chart table was made from wood taken from HMAS Victory, which of course was Nelson's flagship at the Battle of Trafalgar, as you can see there. There were also wooden pieces from the Cutty Sark. Here is it below deck. Notice the kettle and the gas hob. Captain of the Spirit of Mystery was Pete Goss. He'd served in the Royal Navy like Richard Nichols. Ocean racing and sailing are in Pete's blood. And in the 1996-97 Vendée Globe single-handed round-the-world race, Pete turned back to save the life of a capsized fellow competitor from France. This earned him the Legion d'Honneur and an MBE. Like the original mystery, the crew were all related. They were Pete, brother Andy, son Elliot, who was aged 14. I can't imagine letting my 14-year-old son go on a round the globe trip in a little boat, but anyway, and his brother-in-law, Mark Maidment. The Spirit of Mystery left Newland on October 2008. Stopping at Cape Town for Christmas. There are 750,000 Australians, at least, with Cornish heritage, probably the largest number in the world outside Cornwall. In fact, more than in Cornwall itself. So, of course, there'd be a Cornish welcome in Australia. Spirit of Mystery left Newland on the 20th of October 2008 and arrived 141 days later on the 9th of March 2009. She was visible at first light as she sailed into Port Phillip Bay at approximately 6:15 a.m. Included in the people watching from Queenscliff were descendants of the Kalinack family. Here are some of the principals at the time, referring to the original crew as the Magnificent Seven. In 2009, there was a welcome dinner at the Royal Yacht Club of Victoria in Williamstown. Official guests were, of course, the crew, as well as Phil and Lorna Kalinack. They are descendants of Charles Kalinack, brother of Job, who was on the original mystery in 1854. In 2009, the CAV also unveiled a plaque on the wall at the Yacht Club. Pictured CAV president at the time, Derek Warren, and former president Lindsay Chapman, as well as Phil Kalinack. Here's the plaque at the Yacht Club in honour of both the mystery and the Spirit of Mystery. Last November, we celebrated 15 years since the Spirit of Mystery arrived. We had a special lunch at the Royal Yacht Club in Victoria. And here we are, and yes, that's me in the top left, doing this exact presentation. On that day, sent me an email. And wonderful to hear from you and to find that Spirit of Mystery hasn't been forgotten. I haven't seen Lindsay's video, and we really appreciate it if you could send it across, as I'm sure it will stir many a memory. Very sorry to hear that Lindsay has passed, and I trust that you will all offer him a toast at the dinner. Cheers, Pete. And we did. Now, this movie you're about to see, it's only short, was recorded by former CAV President Lindsay Chapman, who died last year, aged 95. It tracks the Spirit of Mystery as she arrived on the 9th of March, 2009. Miras the Uick Huiol, or thank you all.
This was the scene on Hobson's Bay, just off Williamstown, on the 14th of March 1855. It shows a small fishing lugger Mystery being escorted into port by the water police. Imagine the surprise earlier that morning when the pilots at Port Phillip Heads saw this small boat approaching. On boarding it, they found that on board were 7 young men from Cornwall. They had sailed to Australia in their own vessel, hoping to find gold.
Beautiful weather. Mark's on the cave. Isn't it brilliant? How is he? Good. What's the next thing this morning to the hospital? Hey! Great night, great night. Harmony, can you hold back so we can get shots?
Sandringham Beach, we've been tracking the Spirit of Mystery for the last few minutes. Sandringham Beach, we've been tracking the Spirit of Mystery for the last few minutes.
Spirit of Mystery for the last few minutes. There's a group of Cornish Australians waiting to welcome in the Spirit of Mystery.
Oh yeah, yeah. Come on.
June,
Yes,
whenever
everything's
you
organised,
say-
Lindsay.
Whenever
We're
you
all set
say
to go.
June will be taped.
Will she?
Hurry up.
Okay, have you got everything under control?
No.
That will be fine. Spirit is tied up.
Three cheers for mystery! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hooray!
All day, the Spirit of Mystery, here she is. So a quick 3 cheers for the boys and welcome. Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray! So welcome Pete and crew to Royal Yacht Club Victoria. So a few short speeches. I won't keep you out in the sun for too long. May I introduce you to the Mayor of the City of Hobsons Bay, Mr. Peter Hempel.
Thanks, Tony. To Pete Goss, Andy Goss, Elliot Goss, Mark Maidment, their families, Tony Spencer, the Commodore of the Royal Yacht Club of Victoria, Derek Trewarn, President of the Cornish Association of Victoria, Peter Harris, who headed the local steering committee. Welcome here today, and I'm very pleased to be here to welcome the crew to Williamstown, not without its dramas. So I officially welcome them to Williamstown. Congratulations to you all in making this amazing journey. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd now like to introduce to you the President of the Cornish Association, Mr. Derek Trewarn.
Thanks very much. Councillor Peter Hempel, Mayor of Hobsons Bay, Mr. Tony Spencer, Commodore of the Royal Yacht Club of Victoria, Peter Harris, Tall Ships Victoria, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I think that pretty much picks you all up somewhere there. As President of the Cornish Association of Victoria, I feel I can speak on behalf of all the Australian-wide Cornish associations and their members, and all those very other fortunate Australians who have family ties with Cornwall. Congratulations to you. It is my great privilege and honour to welcome Pete Goss and the crew of Spirit of Mystery to Melbourne after their epic sea voyage from Cornwall, a journey of some 12,000 nautical miles. I would have said this was a Cornish welcome, but I think I've been beaten to the punch there by Betty Johns, who, is that right, Pete, who met you at Portland, so she's got in first. But I did get there with the first beer for you. Immigrants from Cornwall made a significant contribution to the early development and prosperity of Australia. Firstly, as free settlers in South Australia, then in the mid to late 1800s as skilled miners and tradespeople in the tin and copper mines of South Australia and the gold fields of Victoria and in other states too, but they were the main areas. They also worked as quarrymen near Melbourne. It's worth noting that over that period, Cornwall lost about a third of its young, energetic population due to immigration. As previously mentioned, and I'll cut across it again, It was in 1854, just a few years after the discovery of gold in Australia, that a group of 7 Cornishmen met in the Star Inn at Newland, a small fishing village on the shores of Mounts Bay, Cornwall, a beautiful spot. They decided to try their luck on the goldfields in Victoria and were discussing how best to finance the voyage out. No doubt after a few drinks, they made the momentous decision to sail out themselves in a 37-foot Cornish fishing lugger called the Mystery, which was co-owned by 2 of the men, Job Kleinack, and there's quite a few of the Kleinack descendants here today. You might wave your hand if you're somewhere there, over here and somewhere else. And Richard Nichols. Richard had served in the Royal Navy, as has Mark, and took on the job as navigator. I'd say that'd be no mean feat. They set sail on the 18th of November 1854, and the Mystery made only one stop at Cape Town before arriving in Melbourne on the 14th of March 1855. A journey of some 116 days. Fantastic. 154 years later, skipper Pete Goss and his noble crew here have overcome amazing odds to successfully replicate this journey in their gallant Cornish fishing lugger Spirit of Mystery, and we've all seen it come in today. A faithful reproduction of the original Mystery, and apart from the assistance of modern navigation aids, this voyage replicated that original voyage in every respect and required every bit as much daring and courage to tackle it. But tackle it they did, and in doing so have certainly done Cornwall and themselves proud, very proud. Like me, many of you would have been following their progress on Pete's website since they set sail on the 20th of October, and marvelled at their courage, seamanship and the strength of their sturdy craft. We are extremely proud of those 7 brave Cornishmen who sailed out to Melbourne from Cornwall in 1854, and we are equally proud of the courageous and intrepid crew of Spirit of Mystery who sailed through the Heads this morning and on up the bay to Williamstown to successfully replicate that voyage which took place 154 years ago. And I think a bit of a clap here might come in. Fantastic job. Pete Goss, Andy Goss, Elliot Goss and Mark Maidman. We salute you, we welcome you one and all. Kurno bis Viken. That means Cornwall forever.
Thank you, Derek. We're just going to open it up to a bit of a question and answer session now. So if anyone's got some questions,
Right. Hello, everybody. Hello. No notes for this one. All dressed down. I don't really know what to say. It is fantastic to be here. It's taken 4 months of effort to be here, and that's what we've done. We've sailed from Newlyn down to Cape Town, across the Southern Ocean to Australia, and it has been a bit of an epic voyage. When you think about a week ago we were in a 50-knot storm, we had driving hail, we had huge seas, 14-metre seas, and towards the end of that storm we had a freak wave which knocked the boat down to about 160 degrees, lots of water below, quite a lot of damage on deck, including Mark's leg. Now, the original crew were all related by either blood or marriage, as is this one, as you can tell, and we always said it would either be the making or the breaking of the family. We tried the breaking, but it didn't work, and we're all getting on really very well. And you have to remember, I think, we've been inspired by these 7 guys in 154 years ago who were driven to this trip through hardship, and we were doing this for fun, and I think that's the underlying difference. It's been fascinating to research the history. A year and a half ago we started walking around the local woods with a chainsaw in one hand and a plan in the other one, looking for fallen Cornish oak to make the frames, to build the boat, to actually come here and to sail on this voyage. On the original one, 6 of the crew had never been out of sight of land before, and as in this case there are parallels purely by circumstance. Mark was desperate to come on the voyage, and he did a 4-day dinghy course. Unfortunately, he booked his course on a bank holiday week, so we lost a day of training. Elliot's not really done a lot of sailing, and Andy has done some sailing as a youngster. So this has been a progressive journey for us. We built the boat ourselves with a fantastic team headed up by Chris Rees. We then had a training period, and we always said that we would decide whether to go into the Southern Ocean or not once we got to Cape Town. Actually, by Cape Town, we couldn't have been more confident in the boat, and we really felt that we could hold it together ourselves. So the project had a lot of aims behind it. First of all, we wanted to have fun, and it's been fantastic. I can't tell you how good it's been. We definitely wanted an adventure. We've always wanted to build a wooden boat. We wanted to research history, and we'd hoped that the project would shape the tree, and the website would be a centre of gravity which would start to draw different relatives and information about this fantastic voyage together. And it's done that. It's been fantastic. And the project has just grown of its own fruition. I mean, Peter Harris over here and the club and various members have set up a committee. And so one of the things we've been looking forward to in coming here is to meet the Australian end of the project. We have a big education program underneath this project, so we've had thousands of kids through the boat. And we've always hoped that the inspiration that we've drawn from those original 7, we'll be able to put some life back into it and pass it on to others. So one of the aims at the end of all of this, if we can get one youngster to go that extra mile, then it will have all been worthwhile. I don't know what else I can say really, it's just bloody great to be here, I can't tell you. So has anybody got any questions? Any questions at all? Yep, yep. Say again?
Is that your automatic navigational tool?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. This is our budget chart. Yeah. Well, we wanted to navigate by the stars, and we did a lot of that, and it was fantastic. But on this last leg, there's basically no sunshine. So I have to confess, we did use the GPS, and what that does for me is it really underlines the achievement of those original 7 guys. I memean, they were absolute heroes. I had huge respect for them when I started, and at the end of this, I can say it's at least double. It's fantastic. How was the boat easy to control? She's a fantastic boat. These boats evolved in the western approaches off the Cornish coast, which is quite a hard place to work. And they're known for being quite fast and safe and seaworthy. We've never sailed a boat like this. Actually, now that we've done this trip, I couldn't be more confident with the boat. We could control it with one person on deck on the helm, but we used to have to put restraints onto the tiller. It was hard. I mean, we all felt at times really quite run down and battered and bruised and so on. But she's a lovely boat, and the boat really looked after us. And I think that's the key with these things. It's the boat that gets the crew there, not the crew that get the boat there. Yeah?
What did you think when the boat rolled over?
Well, are there any kids around? Well, it was it's a bit like a car crash actually. There was a huge smash. For me, I was in the hatchway, and it went dark, and I had a lot of stuff coming down through, completely disoriented, and then it felt like being in a storm drain actually on full flood with tons of water pouring down below, and just trying to fight my way up. Very worried about Mark, who was on deck, and then was starting to run out of breath, and is she going to come up again? And so you remember parts of it, and you have these video clips. Andy was in his bunk. One of his clips is hanging onto the side of the boat and swinging up onto the ceiling or the deck head, and then looking down and seeing jets of high pressure water spraying up through the portholes. Elliot can remember it going very dark blue, that dark blue you get when you go diving. And the boat eventually came up and went on deck, my biggest worry, and Mark was in a real mess on deck. And from there we had to really work hard as a team. So all of that training and preparation came into place. There was no time for messing. And everybody stepped up to it, and we all looked after each other. Of course, then the problem then spread to a wider group of people, and I have to say the Australian Rescue Services were absolutely fantastic. And with their help and a doctor back in the UK, we were able to nurse Mark. And I tell you, there's nothing more horrific than watching a foot dancing a different tune to the rest of the body. And Mark's leg was literally flopping all over the place, and grating and grinding bones. So yeah, it wasn't very nice for us. I don't know about Mark. No, absolute hero, I tell you. It's I've seen a few things in my life. Quite humbling.
Firstly, congratulations to you all. But Elliot, what were the highlights and the lowlights of the trip, and what was it like starting with your father?
Yeah, be honest.
Wales, really? No, there's loads of different stuff happened, and because we were on the boat for quite a long time, there was just like loads of stuff. But I reckon there's one time when we had a whole load of whales around the boat. That was class. Yeah, it's alright with Dad. I found out like get along with him. No, it was really good.
Perhaps you should ask him again when I'm not behind him. Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. What a gift as a parent, and we've had a great time. All of us have been superb, I can't tell you. Are you all getting bored? Is there any more questions, or shall I wrap up? Or? May I just, couple of thank yous. Tony Spencer from the Yacht Club. They have been fantastic. You never do these things on your own. Any success rests on a team. And Peter Harris and Fiona, where's Peter? Yeah. Pete's been absolutely brilliant. You know, we've been working for about a year. I've not met these people. It's all on emails and phone calls and things, although Pete did come to you. Here he is. Yeah, no, what a great man. Yeah. Even got a T-shirt, look. And David and Sarah, where are they? Yeah, oh, there it is. Fantastic. They've decided to put us up before they met us. And when we came into Portland, the boat was a bit of a mess. We did need some equipment and so on, and they took the time out to drive all the way down, and they've been fantastic. And Janet Dawes from the council. Is Janet around? Where's Stuart? Is she? Yeah. There's. Ah, here we go. Yeah, fantastic. Right. Well, that's another deal. Yeah. And Lindsay Chapman has been fantastic. So I don't know. Is Lindsay here? So what I'd like to do, if I may, on this journey, every time we crossed a line of latitude or a line of longitude, what we would do is mark it off, and Elliot would draw that dot, and we go dot by dot all the way to Australia. And whenever we did that, we had a little talisker, and what we would like to do is to do that final line and get the mayor to sign his name across Australia, just to prove that we're here, and we'll have a wee dram. And we'd love to show you around the boat, meet you all, and thanks for your time and coming out, particularly on a bank holiday.